Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be able to speak to you about this really original documentary. Maybe you could just start off with a bit of an introduction for people who don't know anything about Wake Up Punk. What can they expect if they watch it?
Well, I'm hoping they'll take something away from it, which is trying to move punk into nowadays. You know, the way it's evolved and where it's developed into being activists and standing up and questioning. So I just wanted to take the political side of punk and adapt it to nowadays, really. That's what I was hoping people would take away. Not to stand, you know, to be puppets, really, rather like they did in the 70s.
And what was the original spark of the idea, and what motivated you to make this documentary right now?
Well, I think it kind of happened really by, it really kind of happened because Joe decided to burn the clothes. So I started by filming that and then realising, well, actually, there's got to be a bigger message for people because they were really hating him for it. And he was the most hated person around. And people really didn't get that he was, at the time, trying to do what punk did originally, exactly what his father did, push everybody's buttons to annoy them, and for a greater, better cause.
And you've got some...
But they didn't get that. Like, they didn't get it in the 70s. Yeah.
You've got some incredible subjects, you know, Vivienne Westwood and her sons. So talk about your relationship with them and, you know, how you're kind of able to, you know, elicit these really candid interviews, to kind of see a different side maybe than we've seen, you know, in other documentaries and other kind of media coverage of her as kind of a fashion icon.
Yeah, that was really lucky. I mean, the way we managed to achieve that, I mean, a lot has to do with my relationships, been with them over a long time, so they trust me because they know I'm not going out to sort of do something quick. I'm in it for the long term. So they kind of showing them all, Vivienne, all the old photographs and all the old clothing really jogged her memory. And being with her sons, we were able to make her totally relax, like it was a family chat, which is not really, because she doesn't really talk about punk because not in great detail. So that's the first time she's done it. And once she started, it all came back with the photographs, the magazines and things like that. So I think it was an important part of documenting a bit of history, really. I felt at the time when I made it. After that interview, I thought it's a really important thing that needs to be put down because there's a lot more of it as well. There's 5 hours, so I couldn't put it all in the film. But I think it's going to be it'll be used one day for something.
And what's interesting to me as well is that kind of balance that the documentary has between talking about punk kind of in that, you know, sort of more general sense, you know, what is the meaning of the word, you know, what is it like as a movement, but then also focusing in on these individuals and their lives and their reaction to it and how it's changed in their lifetime and their relationship to Malcolm, you know, and it doesn't sort of shy away from maybe some of the negative parts of that, their relationship with him too. So was that something important to you to balance those different things?
Yeah, I think so. It was quite a hard balance to get right, where you're trying to put their message across, which was the activism, and that's why they were doing it. That was why they were letting me be giving me all about that intimate part of their relationship, and they never once said that we don't want it in it, which I was very surprised. I was going, wow. When they saw it, they said, well, that's what it is. It's the truth, and that's punk, and they weren't scared of what people might say about them, which where a lot of people are. So I was very pleased about that part. But then, yeah, I mean, it needed to be said because a lot of people write about it, and a lot of people go with what they've been told from the past, and there's a lot of sort of experts around that write about it, but they don't ever actually talk to them, or they kind of make it up. I mean, Malcolm had a lot more to say about that sort of thing, so they've really kind of shied away from it. So I think the record needed to be put straight about their relationship and their family relationship, because a lot's been written and said, and you know, it just needed to come from the horse's mouth, I think.
And I also wonder, you know, if you get quite a different reaction perhaps from the older generation who perhaps lived through, you know, when this all kicked off and all the events around it. And then it's kind of for the younger generation, you know, even for myself, like, you know, seeing some of the archival footage, and you realize it's something that I feel like I know about, but actually I hadn't, you know, didn't understand kind of the actual origins and the detail of it. So it can be quite educational in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I found, you know, in making the film, I found out a lot about punk that I didn't realize, and how it really is an attitude of mind, or that's what it started out to be, and that's what they were trying to achieve, but it got lost through the press. And I think people get an understanding of that with Vivienne. He's trying to explain it, that, you know, it wasn't about the, you know, Mohican haircut and all that kind of stuff. There was a whole other side to it, which I think was really important, because I looked through a lot of punk films, you know, before I started making this, and realised there was nothing like that, particularly out. They'd only just touching on it. They weren't actually focusing on that part. And so I thought, well, that will make a different documentary on punk to everybody else's, which is what I tried to achieve, and bring it into the modern day, rather than being too archival.
And there's one quote in it which says, you know, the day the label punk was devised, and, you know, I think came in a newspaper headline, is sort of the day that it died, because really the spirit of it is something that shouldn't be contained and shouldn't sort of have a uniform around it, you know. And like you said, it's kind of like a spirit or an attitude. And what's your view on that? And how do you see how would you define punk for yourself?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's a zeitgeist, isn't it? It can't contain it. It's all different to different people, and it means such a lot, really. And I think that what I'd like to do, how I would define punk is, as I said, is a state of mind. But I maybe wouldn't have defined it that much before I started this film. I sort of had a bit more swaying towards the music, possibly, and the attitude and the political all went together, when I realized that the actual attitude now is far more important than the history. And that's what I really hope this film was going to achieve, you know, bringing it into the 21st century. Or, yeah, 21st century, yeah. I don't know if I've answered your question that well.
No, you have. And yeah, if you were going to think about, the impact of this film, and, you know, I guess in the same way, back when, you know, in Vivienne Westwood's youth, you know, do we need people to kind of stand up and sort of fight for what they believe in, whether that's about climate change, whether that's, you know, about politics, whether that's being about anti-establishment, and almost apathy is our greatest enemy. So perhaps even if it's not punk in the same way we knew it, that you can kind of still inject that spirit into the contemporary era. Was that one of the impacts you'd hope to have?
That was exactly the whole impact of the film, that I tried to, hoping it would give some sort of message to wake them up, which sort of says in the title, you know, get up and do something, even if it's just a little bit. It doesn't matter if you're doing your part, if you mention it every day, but you've still got to have the mindset to feel that you got to do something, or you should do something. And it's never been more urgent now than it has been. So it's almost, punk has almost got an urgency about it now, and that attitude and that thing, and we really need to do something. And I think people feel helpless, but they're not. But I just hope that they can have, you know, it can resonate within the young youth, which I think it will. I think it will. That's why I kind of like those climate protests pictures that I put in it, to try and inspire them all to sort of get up and relate to what went on in the 70s and use it for the good, for the power of good. It's now. There's never been a more important time.
Did you have a personal view on the burning of the memorabilia? Like, which side of the fence did you shift your position? Like, was it slightly heartbreaking, but also you thought a kind of very punk thing to do?
Oh, it was definitely a punk thing to do. And I'd realised from early on that they're not the only clothes going to be left. It's not so they're burning the the last pieces. There will be something left of punk. And I think, you know, the man of Greenpeace sort of summed it up. He said this could be far more important than than some old designs. When he put the art show and the sort of trying to make people realise what they really value, it could have a bigger meaning than some old clothes that were going to go anywhere. We're going to fade and die, and they've got them in the museums now anyway. So it didn't really. I think that was a bit of press hype, wasn't it? I was quite shocked that you could get 1.9 billion views, and I know who checked the story and who didn't check the story, and there was absolutely no checking of any of what went on. So they just wrote, you just tell them something and they print it and then move on, which was quite a revelation to me, how journalism, it doesn't really exist. When it's a good story and they're just going to sell it and write it and they want to vilify somebody. It was I found that very shocking, because fake news didn't really exist when we started this film. Extinction Rebellion didn't exist, and Vivienne had already done Extinction, My Future, not knowing about Extinction Rebellion. The fake news didn't exist, but there you go. I mean, don't believe what you read. Check it out for yourself, which is a punk attitude.
Well, I think I'm out of time, but can you quickly tell us what you might work on after this documentary? Have you already got something in the pipeline? Or wait for the dust settle on this?
Yeah, I'm working. I've been following since the lockdown. I've been following horse-drawn gypsies, and I'm at the last. We've just walked, I think, 250 miles horse-drawn with gypsy caravans, and we're ending up at a festival. We only have to be horse-drawn. The horse-drawn festival near Birmingham. It's in a couple of days' time. And really just their lifestyle and how they're so low impact, and how people really, really don't like them, their attitudes towards them. So it's quite an epic journey, and it's quite an epic way of life. So, and with all these new laws that are being passed, it's very topical. So yeah, that's what you can see next. Definitely, I'll finish it now, so I've just got to edit it. Yeah,
sounds fascinating. Can't wait to see that as well.
And it was funny. It even tied into Vivienne's new idea, which is no man's lands. No one should own land, and this is not any more apparent with these guys. They can't even stop at the side of the road without being moved on. And they've got horses. They can't. There's nowhere for them to go. Everywhere's putting bollards up, squeezing them out. They don't want them. Want to get rid of them, and they clean up all the rubbish, so yeah, it's very, very it kind of feeds into it naturally. So I think she's just ahead of her time.
Definitely,
always. Yeah.
Well, it's been so lovely to chat to you. Thank you so much, and can't wait for everyone else to be able to see Wake Up Punk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Lovely to chat to you, Nigel. Thanks so much.
Okay.